So again, any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer. But that's just another quick note that questions are anonymous. I put your name here as well. If I won't put your name. Your name is Sean. All that. So, I found myself getting lost in the sea of resumes and applications online. How do successful legal recruiters successfully showcase the unique skills and expertise stand out with the crowd, draw the attention of hiring managers? So the best recruiters will, the quality of the presentation is important, meaning our presentations are color and pictures. And then the other thing is how is the application received? Sometimes the resumes will go into like a field of other resumes. And so we do other things to make sure that the resume keeps being followed up on. So it's one of the things that's very interesting. When you submit a resume someplace online, that resume is just basically there and you hope something happens. When we submit a resume to a law firm, we do things like we send them a newsletter each week, and that newsletter has links in it that will allow them to go see all the resumes of people that are submitted. Then I typically will send like some sort of inspiration, like an article to the law firms with a write-up about, like, I think this week I did something about the importance of an attorney being able to stay at their position long-term and sent that out. And so that was meeting someone that doesn't have a lot of jobs as a better candidate. So I did a write-up about that. The previous week, I did stuff about maybe can the attorney be managed. So every week I stay in touch with the law firms. And then in turn with that, also reminding them of all of the candidates with a link for them to review the candidates that have been submitted there. And then we also do webinars for law firms as well. So this is one way to be in touch and connect with the law firms on a consistent basis. If you have the ability to make sure that you're constantly seen. So that's one of the things that we do at BCG. And that every 2 weeks, actually on Monday, we send a comprehensive report with all of the resumes and things that have been submitted. So that's the way that we do it. When you're trying to get a position, it often looks a little bit, it's offered to law firms. I hate to say it, but law firms often find it very annoying when people follow up. And to them, that makes them seem like they're not a good candidate. So it's like the law firm wants to be in charge of making the decision of bringing you in. So if the law firm sees that you're sending messages and things, and then they don't like that as much. One of the best ways of getting the attention of a law firm is doing things like sometimes you can actually go in and drop off the resume. That carries a lot of weight. You could have that in a envelope or something. That, to me, that's one way to stand out, is if you somehow do things like that. I used to have a company, and I really wish I was operating it right now. It was called Legal Authority, and it still has a website up, but we're not doing the service anymore. But what that company would do is they would print up your resume. They would redo your resume, read your cover letter, and then they would prepare letters to go out to law firms at different geographic areas, highlighting whatever regions you want to work in, basically to hire people, telling them you wanted to work there. And it was a letter as opposed to just an email. And my advice always is send a letter, because no one is sending a letter. So if you send a letter, like in an envelope, that's going to make a massive difference in terms of your ability to get a position, because no one else is sending letters. And if you're sending letters, you're going to stick out. People like it. People also like it, by the way, when you walk into the office. And I remember I was in a Malibu in an office. I had this law firm that just did a lot of our work. And it was called Harrison Barnes Law Firm. But in the whole 10 years that I operated this law firm, only 2 people walked in to hand me the resume. One of them I hired, and it was not a good hire, but it was the person that walked in was the one that got the job. But your ability to do that is important. So this year. Okay, so next question is about working with recruiters. I've heard mixed opinions of whether it's beneficial to work exclusively with one recruiter or to engage with multiple recruiters simultaneously. What are the pros and cons of each approach, and how can I determine which option is best suited to my job search needs? Okay, so it's up to you if you work with more than one recruiter. Recruiters they're salespeople. So they're often very threatened if you work with more than one person. What are the benefits of working with more than one recruiter? If you work with more than one recruiter, that particular recruiter may have contact for people that like them inside of law firms that the other recruiters doesn't have. a lot of hiring is based on your qualifications and so forth, but a lot of it is also based on relationships you may have with firms. The firms that you've had the best relationships with are often the ones most likely, the firm the recruiter says, are also more likely to hire people from them. So the pros and cons are a good recruiter with a certain relationship with a firm may be better than one that's not. So, that's sort of, if a recruiter tells you they made a bunch of placements at a certain firm, then there's probably a relationship there. And so that can sometimes help you, but not a lot. The issue with law firms and hiring is generally they'll look at your resume and they'll say, does this person have the qualifications? Did they look like someone that we'd want to hire? That's pretty much it. And that's usually what controls it. But if a recruiter is working on a search for a law firm, sometimes when you're called by a recruiter and the recruiter says, I'm working on the search, and it's like a law firm, say you haven't heard a lot from, or the one they've been making a lot of placements at, then that may often be a place where, that's good for you in terms of you can get a job at. But I guess that's a long-winded answer. But if you work with a recruiter, it's not, I don't get offended when someone tells me they're working with a recruiter, because my job is to basically present as many opportunities to that person as possible. And I know that most recruiters aren't doing that. But again, working with a recruiter that has a certain relationship with a firm that has made a lot of placements there. And generally those firms, by the way, if it's like a large AmLaw and other law firm, it matters a little bit, but those firms just know what they want, and they're less attached to one recruiter than not. So there's that. And then, so I guess that's a long-winded answer of telling you that the best results from working with a recruiter are probably going to be when you're not at a top firm, you're at a smaller firm, you're insurance defense, or you're at a firm or they're calling you about a firm like a boutique firm you've never heard of. Then these people, those are usually the best reasons to work with a recruiter. Work with one recruiter, and then on that job, you make the search specific to a job as opposed to your entire search of a different market. The next question. Hi, Harrison. I had a really strange experience. During the initial conversation, I was more interested in my personal life and my professional qualification. Is this normal practice in the industry? I should be aware of recruiters' statutory responsibilities. Yeah, I think a recruiter's job is to try to connect with you on some level. I don't know that all this personal information is really that important. Most of the time, they want to know about your professional qualifications. Sometimes knowing about things like your family, if you have children, and those sorts of things are actually useful to know, because law firms do prefer people a lot of times children, because it means you have to work, which is good. That's one thing. But yeah, recruiters, if they're asking too many personal questions and you feel uncomfortable, then you shouldn't work with them. That's as simple as that. And it's not normally industry. Most recruiters are they're very cut and dry. They just want to get you out to a firm that has an opening to make a life. This is interesting. This person says, here's a question. In my experience, some recruiters seem to prioritize quantity over quality when it comes to the work they produce for job seekers. How can I identify in selecting a recruiter generally prioritize crafted, tailored, high quality materials to rate? So that's a good question. Sometimes a recruiter, and I'm a recruiter at a recruiting firm, in order to get you a position, they have to create a market for you. So there's not always, if you're trying to get a position in a certain market, there may not always be a lot of openings, that they may need to contact a lot of firms. That's actually very good, because they're trying to find places that will hire you. And if they're able to find places that are hiring, they're going to often do far better than if you try to find places that won't hire you. So getting you out into the market is actually very important. If a recruiter is able to do that, and they believe they can do that, then most recruiters can't. That's actually very good. Most recruiters, by the way, will only introduce you to firms that have openings. So if a recruiter is able to introduce you to firms that have openings, that can be very useful, and it often requires quantity. So identifying recruiters that will produce high quality work product and do that sort of thing. I've been in this business again for 25 years. When I started the business, I would sit down and write like a 5 or 6 page letter about my candidates. I got so excited about them, and send those to law firms, or sometimes they were like 10 or 12 page letters, because I was really passionate about it, and would do something like that. And it worked. People jobs, incredibly effective. And then I would hire recruiters, and and they never would do it. And then if I didn't watch them very closely, then the work product would fail. So the person that you work with as a recruiter needs to really care about what they do. It's very rare to find someone that's producing a high quality work product because, recruiters are salespeople. And unfortunately, and a lot of them believe that the most important thing is just getting your resume and getting you out there. That's the job. And you can find recruiters that are really good and do that. But most of the time, you're not going to find ones that will do that, which I would say is problematical. What do you do? A lot of times you can apply to those things on your own if you want to produce a really good work product. And if that's what you want to do, for a lot of people, that would be actually more effective than using a recruiter unless the recruiter has a really good relationship with the firm and believes that they can use that to get you right. Okay, let me see. This is actually a good question. So this person says, why do you focus exclusively on big law attorneys, even though they represent about 5% of all attorneys and not smaller law firms? Do you find turnover is much less in smaller law firms? And there are other reasons there too. No, actually, I don't focus exclusively on big law attorneys. I think that there are on BCG right now, there's 25,000 active candidates that we've been working with for years and however long. And I would say that 95% of them are big law attorneys. The big law attorneys they're a very small percentage of what we represent because most of the activity is in smaller firms. It's in insurance defense, it's in personal injury, whatever. It's not trademark, trust and estates. That's where most of the activity is. No, I don't focus exclusively on big law attorneys. And I think it's incredibly pompous that a lot of recruiting firms will do nothing but that. I think the commissions are larger because they're larger firms, but no, we don't focus exclusively on big law attorneys. And it's the exact opposite. It's not something that we do. It's better. I think it's much better for us to focus exclusively on smaller law firms. Yeah, next question. So I'm glad that you asked that. This is just not true. In the current comment, what specialties of law are hurt? Least new hires and which are the most resilient? At least that. Yeah. So in LA, so the most active practice areas are always going to be litigation, and it could be commercial, insurance, et cetera. But those practice areas are active, and then some other ones that they're doing really well are what else? Personal injury, trust and estates, immigration can do okay depending on the dynamic and climate. There's meaning Democrat good. It's like good. Let me pull up a few more of these practice areas. Actually a good question. I'm just pulling up a database where I can show you different practice areas. Let me see. You can search. This is just an example. I'll show you. Just like go over some practice areas for you because this is actually a very good question. You asking about Los Angeles. So practice areas. So candidate search, practice area. Here we go. Probably a practice area. Okay. So what practice areas are good in LA? So anything you ever do when you try to go into a niche practice area, it's always very risky. Like antitrust, kind of bankruptcy can be risky because they're just very niche practice areas. But construction is a very good practice area. There is always a demand in that. Construction is broken down by things like construction litigation for plaintiffs, defendants, construction defect, construction. We just have all these different construction. Construction is always a great practice area. There's just whatever the economic climate, it's good in LA. It's actually even better in Orange County. But yeah, anything to do with construction is a great practice area. Very few people think about it and go into it. But when you're in construction, you can almost always get jobs regardless of the economic climate. And even when you get senior, you can get jobs in construction. Corporate is not a good practice area when the economy's not doing well. Sometimes M&A can do okay when the economy's not doing well, but securities is always bad. General corporate is always bad. Corporate attorneys have not been getting jobs and interviews for a couple of years. It's just been very slow. Very difficult practice area when the economy's slow. When the economy is good, corporate attorneys are like rock stars. Like everybody wants them. And when the economy's not good, it's the exact opposite. Very scary practice area to go into if you're a law student or a new attorney, a current attorney. It's just very risky. You can become very successful in it. There's your attorney to bill over $2,000 an hour, but it's very risky for new attorneys to go into. Data privacy is not a good practice area. Everyone goes into it. There's used to be opportunities, but I don't think anybody's getting interviews. Education is always a good practice area, but it's also very niche. So there's not a lot of firms that do it. But if you do that, that's another practice area that does well in all economic climates, but there's just not a lot of opportunity. Entertainment and media is always a very difficult practice area. It's very difficult to get jobs. The pay is not very good, very risky. Environmental is good. ERISA, I'll just talk about the big ones. Family law is very good. You can always do well doing that. Finance is just like corporate. It's very difficult. Guardianship and service. Healthcare is always very good. That's a great practice area because it's such a big part of the economy. Immigration is good. Insurance is always good. Insurance coverage is great. Any form of insurance defense plaintiffs is great. And these are practice areas where you can always be employed. Intellectual property is not good. It used to be patent was very active. And right now, trademark is in demand for some reason, but trademark is usually not in demand. Patent and IP litigation were a very difficult practice area. It was very hot in the 2000s, and then 2000 people were doing IP litigation, but it's a very difficult practice area right now. And it's not something anybody should go on with the exception of trademark, unless you have some sort of background in it. Labor employment is always good. That's a great practice area in LA. It's good for plaintiffs. It's good for labor law. Labor law is more niche, but it's good for wage and hour. These are all great practice areas to be in. If you want to be going to labor employment, you're in good shape. Litigation, pretty much most forms of litigation do well. There's a lot of stuff going on here, like workers' comp is very good. White collar is very difficult. Trust in the state is good. Securities is good. Real estate, product liability, mass torts, plaintiff and defense, healthcare, criminal law, all these are good things to go into. It's litigation. If you're an existing attorney, it's very good. Medical malpractice. Every form of litigation is smart to go into. The only thing I would say to you about litigation is if you want to go into commercial litigation, we work in a big firm and you have to have very good qualifications, best law schools, things like that. So that can limit you to some extent, but most firms in litigation are good. Municipal law is good, but there's not a lot of firms that do it. Real estate is another practice area that can do very well, but it's also dependent on the economy. Like now there's a lot of people aren't buying commercial buildings and stuff, so it's dangerous. Tax is very dangerous. Real estate right now is not the best practice area to be into. Real estate traditionally also, by the way, does well when interest rates are low, and then when it's high, there's less activity. Tax is a very risky practice area. If I were an attorney, advising an attorney, thinking about what I want to do in their career, I think tax is probably the riskiest practice area you could possibly go into it because tax attorneys work with attorneys they work with the back end and like M&A and things like that. If you're a transactional tax attorney, there are a few things that can do well. Controversy is interesting because there's a lot of work that you can do that doesn't involve that you can litigate and stuff, which is fun. And sometimes you can do that at smaller firms. But almost state and local tax can be good. There's a whole community about that. But in general, it's very difficult for tax attorneys to get jobs. So you have to have an LLM usually. Telecommunications, trust in the states is awesome. So right now, the practice areas are on fire. Most people that do trust in the states are getting jobs and sometimes multiple offers. I've had things happen where my candidate gets an offer and then they just have 2 or 3 other offers that they've gotten. And they just stop responding to me. I've never had that happen. Trust in the states is hot. It's hot all over the country. There's just lots of jobs and opportunity for trust in the states attorneys. And then finally, workers' comp is a great practice area. The money that you make in workers' comp isn't as much, but it's an awesome practice area. That's one that I recommend as well. Let me just make sure I pull up the right document, get more questions. Yeah, these are good questions about practice area. I'd love to do a long presentation about practice areas at some point. I don't know whether it would be interesting for a lot of people, but there's definitely a lot you can talk about when it comes to practice areas. Okay, in my past job search, I made a few mistakes that may have affected my chance with certain firms. How can I leave recruiter assist me in minor mistakes and positioning myself for future opportunities? If you made mistakes in your last job search, I wouldn't take it too seriously. A legal recruiter can often, if they have exclusive opportunities, they can package you for those. They help you learning and they can help you learn from those mistakes by things that you can do better in your job search in the future and how you can package your resume. But a recruiter, and the thing about recruiters, and it's not anything that you need to take too seriously. But recruiters are salespeople. Most of them, it's a sales type job. They're looking for the best product, and if they don't have a good product to market, they're going to try to find one. As recruiters will look at you and they will either think that you're a good product or not a good product. I look at everyone and I see the opportunity, and I represent a lot of people, but a lot of recruiters don't. You also have to look at a good product, because recruiters, keep in mind, there's 1.6 million attorneys in the United States, and there's not a lot of as many recruiters. So recruiters are just looking for the best product, and most recruiters are not going to be able to help you, most of them, unless you look like a good product to them. I don't know how to say that. And the other thing too is, if you're worried about looking good to certain firms, the market for places you can work is just astronomical. There's tens of thousands of law firms. Not getting into a certain law firm isn't really something you should worry about. I mean, you should find a place that likes you, and a recruiter can't fix that. A recruiter is going to get you to the best places that they can. Okay, I think that's the last question. And thank you for the questions. And I think this is a very good webinar, and I hope that everyone really got the message. The main message here is that whenever you do, representing clients, working for people, you have to really care about what you're doing. And if you don't see yourself ever caring about being a lawyer representing people, then you're not can ever do anywhere nearly as well as you should. My hope for you is that this will that you will learn from this and do much better in your career, which I really hope you do. Thank you, everyone, and I will be back next week.